Hello everyone, my name is Jack from Tozando and welcome to another one of our product reviews. We're going to be looking at this Bogu today. This is the Animus Bogu, which is a special cross-stitch Bogu. And so that means that instead of the straight horizontal lines that you get on regular Bogu, it's done in a grid. Much like Tezashi hand-stitched Bogu is also done, but obviously done with a machine instead of by hand. Now, this gives it a lot more flexibility, especially when it's done to a broad stitch, because it creates this kind of grid of interconnecting points, and so they kind of mold and sort of map against what they're put against, which is great if it's your body, because it can sort of fit to you and be really comfortable. It's also more durable in general than normal stitch, because again, these points all support each other when the futon is struck. So it's a great type of stitch if you're looking for protection, and especially if you're looking for comfort. The next feature kind of links in with the cross stitch is the stitch interval, or the width. You'll often hear about 2mm Bogu, 3mm Bogu, 4mm Bogu. Well, this is 8mm. Now, 8mm is for a long time and still somewhat is seen as a really broad stitch width, and was associated with gear not being too good. But this is because of the myth that narrow stitching is higher quality. That's just not the case. It's narrow stitching just takes longer to do because there's more lines to do and you have to be closer, which makes it more expensive and longer to produce. But the disadvantage of being narrow, like 3mm or 2mm, is that it compresses the futon of your Bogu so much that it reduces the impact absorption. So 8mm is a really sort of protective stitch width. So what that adds up to is a very protective Bogu. So we've got a really strong protective qualities and a very comfortable fit. The next feature I'd like to talk about is the actual materials that this Bogu is made with. The Animus uses Orozashi cotton. Now, this is a really nice and lightweight material, and it's also very breathable. So this is very practical for making Bogu because it means it dries quicker, it's not too heavy, and it's quite comfortable and still adds a bit of protection and visual interest. Now, I really like Orozashi because it being made from indigo dyed cotton, it fades in the same way as your dolgi does, and so it kind of ages in a really nice way, similar to deer skin as well. So overall, we've got a really interesting set that has a strong protectional foundation, really comfortable, and then high quality materials and construction. So we're going to take a look at the different parts now and see what advantages this Bogu brings. Okay, so we're going to look at each part individually now. So let's start with the men. So it's nice and solid. So this is definitely not a lightweight set, like a Jisengata set. So it's not designed for shiai. And the majority of the weight outside of the mengane is going to come from this futon, which is pretty thick actually. I think when we measured it, it's around maybe 10 to 14mm in places. It's quite thick. But as you can see, if I show you the inside here, it's quite malleable. This is a result of the cross stitch and the 8mm stitch as well. So it retains a stiffness, so it'll hold its shape, but you can still move it and apply it. Now, this is really important because if you put it on, everyone's head shape is different. And so if you've got a really stiff Bogu, that can kind of sit uncomfortably or pull in or pinch, especially at the temples. But if I put this on, I can feel it like squeezing around, but in a very comfortable way. So it just I imagine that when the hemo tighten, it'll sort of like wrap around and comfortably fit the contours of my head. So let's have a look at the futon here. You've got really nice broad stitch here, all the way down actually, and then here is the orizashi cotton that kind of provides that extra layer of protection and resistance, because here's the strike zone, but also looks, you know, really nice as part of the style of bogu. You can get this done in deer skin on some other bogu, but for the Animus, because it's designed for everyday keiko and to be as practical as possible in many ways, orizashi has been chosen. But the good thing about orizashi is it fades in a really beautiful way, and this effect will match to bits like the ago. The ago is here, is where, you know, it's the skidare, where you get skied. This has all been made with genuine deer skin as well, as is the hedikawa here. Now this doesn't often get used for sort of run-of-the-mill ordinary bogu, or bogu that's regularly available, as in not made to order. So it's really nice to have this feature here. Another point of the mendare is, if you see, there's a, you know, you've got your straight lines and then it goes diagonally. This means that these kind of curve a lot easier, especially with the movements of your shoulders. So if you're coming into a strike and you're going men, this will move easily and won't impede your shoulders. So if you don't like the feeling of, you know, your things getting in the way of your shoulders during keiko, then this is a really nice style of men. It's also really popular amongst jodan practitioners and nito practitioners as well, because if you're spending your whole life in jodan, or you're holding your daito above your head, you want a mendare that will curve nicely and then curve back and kind of fit in form with you. So yeah, it looks really good. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the kote. So your kote are so important to your training. For two reasons, in my opinion. The first is they protect you from a place that's very thin, easy to bruise, and hurt. So, you know, if you're taking kote, you want it to be protected, no matter what you're doing. The next thing is, as you know, kendoka, one of our main movements is how we hold a shinai and how we can strike. So, fortunately, these kote are very good on both of those fronts. First things first, they've got a really nice thick futon, and it's kind of pliable. Like, often kote can be kind of like this stiff tube that like impacts you, but these are really comfortable because they kind of mold to you a little bit and sort of enclose your forearm, which is really, really nice. Details wise, they've got a really simple patterned finish with the orizashi cotton that goes here, and they've got that broad stitch width, so it's really nice and protective. Just like on the men and the rest of the bogu, the hedikawa, this bit, is all indigo deerskin. So those are nice and tough, and they feel really great, and they look fantastic. But I think for me, as a practitioner, the biggest bonus are these tenouchi. So often, your regular bogu sets these days are using like clarino or synthetic leather palms, but these are real deerskin. And then orizashi finishing on the atama, these heads, is really nice and practical. It's going to dry quickly, which is important if you've got deerskin palms, because if you want to dry it up like this, and then so once the sweat dries as quickly as possible, it maintains your deerskin palms. That's a really nice foundation for a bogu set, that you've got two, really comfortable men, really comfortable kote that protect you. So yeah, now we're going to move on to the do. Now, when it comes to kendo bogu, the two most iconic parts are probably the men and the do. So, with that out of the way, let's have a look at this do. So, it's got your standard black dodai. This is actually what is known as a Yamato do. Now, a Yamato do is a synthetic type of do, and so it's made from reinforced cellulose resin. But instead of it being one single plate, it's many staves so like single staves that make a curve, which is traditionally how bamboo do are made. And so if you look on the back, you can see where these staves intersect with each other and connect. And this, all around here, is kurozan leather. So it's genuine leather. It's got this nice traditional kazari, which is called hongumo SG. So overall, it's just continuing the idea of, you know, high quality materials and finish, which is, I think, what the Animus is about. It's providing a good, high quality bogu that serves you well in keiko. So yeah, so that's the do. So let's move on to the tare. So onto our final piece, which is the tare. So here, this is really nice and thick, and I can feel it. So I know that if I'm getting struck here, it's not going to matter. Like, it's just going to be fine. And there's this beautiful indigo deer skin around all of the tare panels. So even the back ones, and the finishing as well is really nice. You've got these front corners, which is all deer skin. And that gives it a really nice luxury feel. So even though it is finished in orezashi, like key details are picked out in deer skin, which just gives it that nice dignified look that a lot of people really love in traditional styled bogu. So for me, the main principle quality I want in a tare, other than, you know, providing good protection for what it does, is I need to be able to move in it. It needs to be comfortable for me. So this is perfect in terms for the Animus has a really good example of a functional tare, because as you can see, there's this broad stitching which is really flexible. So actually I'm going to put it on properly so you can see how flexible it is, because the 8mm is so pliable. It's really comfy. It doesn't sort of stiff. I don't feel it digging into my hips, which is really nice. And you can see that even though the knot here is kind of bulging, it falls really nicely because you've got these 5 lines and it's a soft, but that's not the most important factor for me. The most important factor is that, you know, as I'm doing ashi sabaki, it's sitting nicely and it's not impeding me. It's practical, it's protective, and it's most importantly very comfortable and fits and moves with you. And this is thanks to its cross stitch. And then on top of that, it's finished in a really lovely, durable way. So it's going to last and it's going to look fantastic whilst doing it. So the Animus is really good for everyday training because it's light and it protects you. And thanks to the cross stitch, which, you know, forms around you, you can move with it really easily. Secondly, I see it as a, you know, a really good set to do examinations in, because it's got a really nice uniform look. It's not too, it doesn't like stand out too much, but it's easy to move in, so you can be comfortable. And if you're doing lots of keiko in it, then you're going to be used to it and it's going to be, you know, natural. Outside of that, the cross stitch, because it adds a lot more durability to the futon, the set will last you a long time. So even though it's an investment that's going to keep on, you know, it's going to be with you through your keiko. So I would recommend this set for people who are looking for a great set of bogu that's good for keiko and examination. So it's, you know, like the pillars of your shugyo, as it were. So like your kendo journey is going to be a lot of keiko. So you want a good bogu set to protect you and carry you through it. So yeah, so I hope you found today's video useful. Please comment if you want to know about our other products or anything you'd like. So yeah, so hopefully see you soon for another product spotlight. And yeah, thank you very much. Goodbye.